Has Jack come home? The nanny said he sent over the divorce papers and won't be coming back. Olivia said she couldn't pick me up from the airport because of work. But I saw her hugging her first love who just returned to the country at the airport. So, I turned around and booked the next available flight to a city without Olivia and Eric. At 10:30 p.m., Olivia got home. The nanny told her I wasn't back yet. Olivia felt uneasy and dialed my number. But no one picked up. She started to panic and kept calling. But it was always busy. I went back to my hometown to take care of my sick dad for a few days. When I returned, Olivia said she'd pick me up at the airport. Not even a minute after hanging up, she called back, saying she couldn't make it and had urgent work, so I'd have to come back on my own. I knew the company was preparing for an IPO and had a lot going on, so I let her be. But seeing those two hugging at the airport sent my heart plummeting. The bustling airport felt calm inside me. I asked to book the next available flight. Only one goes to City T. All right, let's go with that. City T, over 500 kilometers from Deep City, was a place I'd always wanted to visit but never had the chance. That place I longed for was on that flight, and the city I wanted to escape was right here. I used to dream of spontaneous trips, but now the meaning has changed. Turns out, I can just leave without worrying if she's taken care of, not needing to handle all the little details of her life. Turns out, I can leave just like that one day. 5 years of marriage, yet Eric, the third wheel, was everywhere, and sometimes I felt like the one who didn't fit in. Seeing them together, I suddenly realized I couldn't bear it any longer. I managed to check into a hotel when my phone rang. It was Olivia calling. I hesitated for a second and didn't answer. In the room, the phone kept ringing. I decided to turn it off. Sleep. Olivia came home at 10:30 p.m. She thought it'd be like usual. I'd be watching TV in the living room waiting for her. But she only saw the nanny. She stared at the sofa, lost in thought. After a moment, she asked the nanny, "Where's Jack? He hasn't come home. Didn't he go to his father's?" Olivia was taken aback. What? Didn't he get off the plane at 6:20 minutes before Eric did? He should have been home by 7:30. She glanced at the clock. A feeling of unease and guilt crept in. She had broken her promise and didn't pick me up. After hanging up, Eric had called, saying he returned and asked if she could pick him up. She didn't refuse instinctively. To avoid any unnecessary situation, she let me take a cab home. But I wasn't home now. Thinking of this, she quickly phoned me. The ringtone lasted until it went to voicemail. Olivia frowned. This was unusual. Jack would never ignore her calls. Has something happened? A knot formed in her stomach. Feeling uneasy, she called again. But after a few rings, it went busy. Her brows furrowed. Her expression darkened. She kept calling, met with the monotonous busy signal. She clutched her phone tightly, realizing something was suddenly spiraling out of control. Clearly, I'd blocked her. Olivia didn't understand why. Was I upset with her? An idea lingered in her head. The next day, I turned on my phone, showing 10 missed calls and some messages. 2 were from Olivia. The rest were from our nanny Susan. It was kind of funny. The nanny seemed to care more than my wife. Then again, for her, calling me 3 times was a lot more than usual. Usually, unless she needed something, she wouldn't call. And me? I'd answer her calls immediately. If I missed one, I'd keep explaining I was busy. But Olivia? She didn't care to hear it, just thought I was annoying. Keep your phone on you so I can always reach you, she'd say. With other couples, it's sweet, but now I just feel small. I'm only there when needed. Otherwise, I might as well not exist. After realizing this, I texted Susan, telling Olivia I wouldn't be back for a while. After breakfast, I stretched on the balcony in a deck chair, staring at the sea. City T is a coastal city. It's neither hot nor cold right now, perfect for lounging around. I sipped on a coconut, enjoying the easy life. Suddenly, a strange number popped up. I decided to answer. A clear male voice came through. "Hey, is this Jack?" "This is Eric." I raised an eyebrow, a bit surprised, but it made sense. Given his connection with Olivia, he had my number. "What do you want?" I skipped the pleasantries. Eric chuckled, a bit scornfully, and said, "You've known about me all along, right? Olivia and I are childhood sweethearts and each other's first love. I went abroad for my dreams. She married you out of spite. You're aware, right? I'm back for her. Hope you get the hint and step aside." I laughed. Are mistresses this bold these days? To him, perhaps I was the interloper, as the one who isn't loved is the third wheel. You want to go back to picking up leftovers, it's yours for the taking. If you can make Olivia file for divorce, I'll give you both my blessing. After saying that, I hung up the phone. I saved that recording, it's my leverage for divorce compensation. And I blocked his number. What a downer, even hiding out here. My ears can't get any peace. Eric sure knows how to get in everywhere. This marriage is definitely over. After hearing what Jack had Susan relay, Olivia's face turned dark real quick. She wanted to see what Jack was up to. But a week has passed, and he still hasn't returned. No news, nothing. She checked the number Susan called from. It was a landline in T-City. Apparently, she doesn't know her husband that well. Not even aware he had friends in T-City. Looking at the photo of her and Jack on her desk, Olivia got a bit lost in thought. It was taken on their first day together. He smiled so brightly, while she, for some reason, looked at him instead of the camera. One day, that photo just showed up on her desk. A young guy from the secretary's office said it was a declaration of ownership. Olivia just laughed at the time, thinking Jack was like other men, focusing on trivial things. But she never took that photo down. Suddenly, someone took it away. Olivia looked up. It was Eric. She frowned. "What are you doing here?" Seeing she wasn't pleased, Eric started to look a bit upset. "Olivia, should I not have come to see you?" He placed the frame back on the desk. "I heard from Susan that Jack left. I'm really worried about you. Was it because I asked you to pick me up from the airport? Is that why he's unhappy? It's all my fault." Eric began to sniffle quietly. "No," Olivia responded, feeling oddly irritated for some reason. In her memories, Jack hardly ever cried. Even at their wedding, he kept his composure. The only time she saw him cry was because of a minor car accident that left her with a cut. She remembers how tears streamed down his face, eyes all red as if he were the one hurt. Olivia felt a little down in her heart. Right then, a knock came from the door. "President, the meeting is about to start." After Olivia left, Eric hesitated for a few seconds while looking at the photo frame, then shoved it into the bottom drawer. In the villa's bedroom that night, Olivia looked around, lost in her thoughts. Every corner of this room was filled with Jack's presence. Everything here, from the wardrobe to the little decorations, was arranged by him. She remembered the anxious yet eager look on his face when he presented it. She kissed him back then, unexpectedly making his face turn red. He punched his chest lightly in embarrassment, avoiding eye contact. Her phone suddenly rang, pulling her out of her memories. It was an unfamiliar number. She didn't want to pick up, but did anyway. "Hello, Olivia. It's me." The moment the first word came through, she knew. Her hand holding the phone trembled slightly. Without letting Jack continue, Olivia snapped, "Jack, have you had enough of your tantrum? If you've had your fill, come back. You know this isn't the time for this. You know my company's going public. Why are you doing this now?" Jack didn't respond. "Say something, Jack." Olivia's eyes looked fierce, her grip on the phone turning her knuckles white. "I'm not throwing a tantrum, Olivia. I sent you a package, it should arrive tomorrow. Look it over, if everything's fine, sign it." Olivia's face darkened further. She didn't expect Jack to speak to her so coldly one day. "What package?" "Divorce papers," Jack replied. "I've had enough of the past 5 years and I don't want to continue." Olivia remained silent. Jack stayed patient, waiting for her answer. "When are you coming back?" "I'll come back to pack once you've signed it." She stared into the snowy night outside. "Jack, what are you really up to?" A silence fell before a cold chuckle came through. "You think I'm making a fuss? So be it." Then he hung up. Olivia immediately called back. But the person who answered was a stranger. He said he was a traveler in T-City, and the person who borrowed his phone had already left. After hanging up, Olivia stood motionless by the large window. In 5 years of marriage, everyone said Jack was an ideal husband, always greeting others with a smile, never losing his temper. Everyone liked him, even the employees at her company, to the point where she almost forgot. Their marriage wasn't sparked by love. It was a matter of duty. His grandfather saved her grandfather and father years ago, a debt her family owed. Funny enough, she had to marry him to repay that. Olivia splashed some cold water on her face in the bathroom, trying to calm down. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her professional outfit was wrinkled, collar askew. Frowning lines marked her face deeply, red veins visible in her eyes. She hadn't slept well in days. Whenever her hand brushed the empty side of the bed, she'd wake and stay that way. Olivia couldn't understand why her emotions were so easily swayed these days. Usually, she kept a poker face. She sighed heavily and left the bathroom. One glance at the empty double bed, she turned and went to the guest room. The next day was Saturday, and Olivia uncharacteristically woke up late. She came downstairs with heavy dark circles under her eyes. Eric looked up and called out to her. She furrowed her brows slightly and replied softly, "This package just arrived." Susan handed her a delivery envelope. Eric got up from the couch and walked over to Olivia. Olivia quickly tore open the package and, without even looking at the divorce papers, shredded them and tossed them in the trash. Eric was shocked when he saw the documents. He couldn't help but let out a surprised gasp, even though he wasn't exactly upset. "Olivia, don't be mad." Eric gently tugged at her sleeve, softly comforting her. "Jack's just angry. He doesn't really want a divorce. I even advised him. Honestly, it's all my fault for coming back," he said, tears welling in his eyes. Olivia was unfazed and replied, "What does this have to do with you? It's his own pettiness. He thinks he can make me beg for him back. But he's wrong." Eric's eyes were filled with tears as he looked at her. "Olivia, don't worry. I'll talk to Jack again. If he misunderstands me, I can leave the city." Olivia instinctively tried to comfort him. "You don't need to do that. What's between Jack and me doesn't need you getting involved." Then she asked, "Did you have breakfast? If not, join me." Eric sniffled and barely smiled. "I haven't eaten yet." The two then headed to the dining room. Meanwhile, Susan was silently fuming, cursing Eric in her mind. Her gentleman, the kindest man she knew, was so considerate of her lady, and yet here they were, all because of this man. She knew she had to keep a close eye on Eric. As Eric sipped his porridge, he wondered why Olivia shredded the divorce papers. Did she want to stay married to Jack? Should he do something to help out? The day I left, I realized I wasn't as important to Olivia as Eric was. After a week of no contact from Olivia and only hearing from Eric, the rival, I knew I had to reach out first. When I called, Olivia didn't offer concern or comfort. She just criticized me. At that moment, I knew divorce was the right choice, despite any hope I might have had. I remember when Eric fled abroad, Olivia did everything to track him down and stayed by his side for 2 months. That says it all. I was finally starting to understand how foolish I had been. Another week passed, bringing me to T-City for half a month. I didn't expect to see Olivia in the hotel lobby one morning. The weather was bad, a mix of snow and rain. She was impeccably dressed, turning heads as she gazed between the front desk and the exit. I felt plain by comparison, with my messy hair under a wool hat and clutching a breakfast of soy milk, donuts, and buns. Being with her made me feel insignificant, but I've come to terms with it. A simple meal shouldn't share a table with a 5-star delicacy. With Olivia, perhaps we should have never begun. Olivia spotted me and approached confidently. She was dragging the suitcase I had brought. I stood there, hands clenched. She glanced over me, her gaze steady. "Your luggage is packed." Looking at my breakfast bag, she added, "Eat on the way." "The papers," she said. "Did you sign them? If you did, I'll go with you to get the license." For a moment, she pulled me along to the black car waiting outside. Once inside, she finally spoke. "Now's not the time for a divorce, you know." I assured her it could remain private. "Jack," she seemed frustrated, Grandpa's birthday is next Tuesday. You have to be with me at the dinner. I underestimated her before, thinking she was gentle and naive. She smirked coldly, but you should know you don't threaten me. And she was right. I couldn't threaten her. In her eyes, my stubbornness was a childish attempt at getting her attention. I had captured her appetite and her body, but not her heart. Why can women separate their hearts and bodies like this? I despaired and said, if you sign, I'll also accompany you to the dinner. Don't worry, our divorce won't be made public. No sooner had I finished than she punched the seat back behind me. The fear was overwhelming. It was the first time she looked so menacing. I cowered in the back seat, too scared to open my eyes. Eventually, she reached for my head but didn't touch it. Finally, she said, just listen, we won't get divorced. Back at the villa, Eric greeted us as if he owned the place. Jack, you're finally back. He approached eagerly, arms open for a hug, but I sidestepped it. I stood 2 meters away, watching him quietly. He exuded an air of sophistication from head to toe. It was evident he had put thought into his appearance. He and Olivia standing together really looked like a match. Meanwhile, standing here with Susan, I felt like we belonged to the same world. Olivia frowned. Jack, where have your manners gone? It's fine, Olivia. Jack didn't mean it. He's still upset with me. Eric said, tears welling up in his eyes, looking like he was about to cry. I stayed silent, calmly watching them put on their show. The atmosphere became tense. Eric finally broke the stalemate. He instructed Susan to take Olivia's luggage, but Susan ignored him, casting him a sidelong glare instead. Susan walked over, holding my hands, filled with concern, and said, I made your favorite sweet and sour spare ribs and stir-fried celery with squid. She drew me into the house as she spoke. Olivia and Eric followed us in and sat at the dining table. Upon seeing the squid on the table, Olivia's eyebrow furrowed. Oh, right. She was allergic to seafood. We hadn't had any seafood on our table since we started accommodating her tastes. But I loved seafood. Before marrying her, I'd have seafood almost 5 days a week. Except when visiting my dad, who'd cook seafood for me, I could count on one hand the times I'd had it in the past 5 years. For her, I didn't just change my diet. My whole lifestyle shifted. Because of her work, she had irregular meals and severe gastritis, often coming home late. I'd always make her a light, stomach-friendly meal, no matter how late, and wait for her. Then I'd eat with her and go to bed together. Susan, there won't be any more seafood at home, Olivia ordered. I swallowed the squid piece I'd just eaten and looked at her. Don't worry, after we're divorced, there won't be any seafood on your table. Jack, Olivia was completely furious now. I said nothing more, quietly enjoying my favorite dishes. Now, I truly had no desire to communicate with her. All I wanted was to enjoy my meal in peace, and for her to sign the divorce papers soon, so we could make it official after the waiting period. The day of Grandpa's birthday party finally arrived. I wore the luxurious suit Olivia's secretary prepared, and we walked into the banquet hall together. Guests turned their attention to us. For a moment, we outshone even the main event. To them, we seemed like the ideal couple, talented and beautiful. Of course, only after dressing up did I match the talent part. Most days, I preferred a plain look and didn't fuss over my appearance. But overall, people thought I was a skilled manager of the home, providing seamless hospitality and support. As for Olivia, that went without saying. Putting aside her family ties, she started her own company at a young age, which was now going public. She became one of the most desirable women in the city. However, the guests' attention soon shifted. Eric arrived. He brought his parents along. Their family was also a well-known name in the city. Had she not married me due to our engagement, they might still have been together and openly at that. Years ago, Olivia caused quite a stir looking for Eric. The whole city's elite knew about it. So when Eric showed up, people started whispering, and some even began to gossip. Despite their history, they invited Eric and his family to the party. It was not surprising. There were many collaborations between the families. They wouldn't let a small matter come between them and my feelings. I was aware, so I felt nothing inside. But I didn't expect Olivia, who said she wouldn't divorce, to leave me in the middle of our dance, in front of everyone, to rush over to Eric. Anxiously hugging him, she left the banquet hall. I didn't know when Olivia returned. The next morning at breakfast, she casually mentioned, "Eric has a child." Her indifference was truly irksome. I tried to hide my anger, but the whiteness of my clenched fists gave me away. "Is that so? Then?" Before I could finish congratulating her, Olivia interrupted me. "Don't worry, I'm not the child's mother," she said, watching me as if gauging my reaction. I looked up at her. My distressed heart suddenly felt lighter. I knew Olivia wouldn't stoop so low, not even for Eric. After a silent sigh of relief, I said, "This doesn't concern me. You don't need to explain it to me. After we're divorced, you can be the child's mother if you want." Olivia didn't flinch. She calmly wiped her mouth and then stood up, looking down at me. "Dad is still ill. Do you really want to worry him?" I realized she was sure I couldn't leave her and was sure I'd be too concerned about my dad to divorce. My relationship with Olivia was happenstance. At that time, she was returning from abroad, chasing after Eric. Coincidentally, I found her drowning her sorrows at a bar. I'd been drugged, and Olivia saved me. A month later, we found out she was pregnant. Her family pushed her to marry me because of the child. But 5 months into the marriage, the child was gone. The night Olivia went to find Eric in America again. Losing the child was devastating, but the doctor's next words shattered me even more. He said it was unlikely we'd ever have children due to medical reasons. During my darkest time, Olivia was with her first love. My dad rushed over, staying with me through that unbearable night. Afterward, he advised me, "Sometimes, it's just not worth it." He reminded me when I was home last, to give up. Loving someone shouldn't mean hurting yourself. Love is mutual. One-sided obsession is self-destructive. People keep saying you married well and that you have good fortune. But you know, a man's worth isn't about marrying well. It's about finding your life's purpose. Son, I know you're tiptoeing around her family because of the kids, and it pains me to see. I hope you can leave and get back to being that carefree, happy boy. Olivia, she's played her cards wrong this time. Since that day, she's been coming home early, bringing me gifts. It's a watch one day, a new game console the next, maybe some knick-knack. Even though I've been cold, she doesn't mind. It's like my attitude doesn't matter. She just keeps doing her thing. I know it's her way of softening up. Every time Olivia goes too far and I show I'm upset, this is how she makes it up. She told me, "Don't worry, Eric's gone to Singapore to take care of the kids. He won't be bothering us anymore. I've got nothing with him. He's just like family." But I'm done listening. I've been disappointed too many times. When Eric was still in the States, she'd visit him several times a year. The deep winter weather is oppressive, and it makes people moody. So, I try to shake off that feeling by watching some games. But just a few minutes into it, my phone rings incessantly, like it won't stop until I pick it up. I sigh and answer. "Bring the papers from my desk to the office, Jack." I say okay on instinct before realizing I should have said no. But the call's already ended. Feeling a bit helpless, I called back, but no one picked up. After a deep sigh, I decided to take them over to Olivia. When I got to the office, the admin assistant told me Olivia was in a meeting and asked me to wait in her office. As I walked in, it felt both familiar and strange. Before, I was there a few times a week, bringing her meals. Her gastritis was pretty bad, so I suggested that eating out too much was harmful. I got a chef to teach me to cook, and every day I made her dishes that were both nutritious and tasty. Thanks to my efforts, her stomach got a lot better, but just a month away felt like forever. Suddenly, something caught my eye. I noticed something missing from her desk. Our first photo together. A picture I treasured dearly because it was the only one where she looked directly at me. My heart felt a little heavy. Some pain just doesn't fade in a month. After putting the papers on her desk, I let him know I was leaving. For dinner, I cooked the same dishes I made for her the first time. When Olivia saw me in the slacks and shirt I wore when we first met, she seemed surprised. "Are you going out?" To her, I only dressed up for business. preferring comfy clothes at home. I smiled. No, I'm not going out. Dinner's ready? Come join me. Her gaze deepened as she walked over and hugged me, whispering, Jack, Jack, Jack. She always said my name like that when being playful, and now was no different. Let Susan prepare your favorite seafood. Don't worry about me. I'll have something else, she said while we sat. It seemed she'd completely forgotten this was my first meal cooked for her. Some things are treasured by some but treated as ordinary by others. You can't fake the details. Olivia left me at the airport once, and that's when my eyes opened. Now, none of it matters. This meal was our last dinner together. The next day, after she left for work, I packed my bags and left. This time, I returned to my dad's. When I told him I decided to divorce, he seemed to have already sensed something. He hugged me tightly. Jack, it's good to have you back. Just good to have you back. Then he took my hand and led me upstairs. My cold hands felt warmer in his. Later that night, I noticed Olivia's car outside my childhood home. Her face was stern, lips pressed tight. My dad, who was walking with me, wanted to confront her. But I gently shook my head. Dad, I'll handle it. You go inside. Olivia grabbed my shoulders. Jack, what's going on? Don't you get it? I don't understand. Aren't we good? Her voice quivered, losing confidence. Good? For 5 years, our semblance of being okay was me fighting to keep it together. I gave up my pride and freedom to patch up our crumbling relationship. I shook her hands off. Just sign the divorce papers. I won't take anything from you or announce it publicly. I won't agree to a divorce, she replied firmly. Her stubbornness surprised me, but I felt little else. Then I'll sue for divorce. It'll affect your image, maybe even your company's listing. Olivia looked wide-eyed, about to speak, but I interrupted. Don't make me lose respect for you, Olivia. Clinging isn't your style. Go back. Don't look for me again. She agreed to meet me at the Civil Affairs Bureau for the proceedings. On the day I got the divorce certificate, I booked a flight home. Olivia drove me to the airport. While waiting, she seemed like she wanted to say something but ended up just telling me to take care of myself. As I left, I felt no longing or need to look back. The first time at the airport, she left me. This time, she truly lost me. But I was free. The weather was bright, and the sun shone everywhere, and I could see further than ever.